the hour of men who don't quit. Got your own 3 a.m. thoughts? Drop them in the comments or hit us up, because this is where men speak their minds.
When the world is quiet, the grind speaks loud. 3 a.m. thoughts, built to move the crowd. Late night grind, no fear in sight. 3 a.m. thoughts where men ignite. Built in silence, forged by might. Rise with the moon on the night.
The clock says 3 a.m., but the journey's just starting. Thanks for tuning in to the 3 a.m. Thoughts Podcast. Remember, real men reflect, rise, and rebuild. Subscribe, and let's keep grinding.
Truth don't sleep, and neither do we. 3 a.m. thoughts where real ones meet.
Thanks for tuning in. And remember, this is powered by AI, where AI meets reality.
Okay, so we've got a lot to unpack here with these LA wildfires back in January 2025.
Yeah, you've sent over a ton of material, news articles, Wikipedia, even some pretty intense YouTube opinions.
And it definitely feels like we're dealing with something bigger than just, a natural disaster.
Oh, absolutely. What's really fascinating is how many different perspectives are out there.
Right.
We've got official report people on the ground saying something completely different, and then there's all this speculation online. It really shows you how quickly information can get distorted, especially in a crisis like this.
So basically, we're putting on our detective hats, trying to figure out what really happened, what it means for LA going forward,
Right.
and maybe uncover some thought-provoking questions along the way.
Exactly. To get our bearings straight, maybe we should start with the basics.
Okay.
The Wikipedia entry on the January 2025 Southern California wildfires gives us a pretty decent overview. We're talking about a series of fires that started in early January, fueled by drought, those insane Santa Ana winds, and incredibly dry conditions.
Yeah, California's been struggling with that for a while now.
It's been a perfect storm. The Palisades fire and the Eaton fire were the two biggest ones.
The ones that made national news, right?
Exactly. And they were absolutely devastating, likely the second and fourth most destructive in California's history.
And when you say destructive, I mean, it's way more than just a few trees going up in smoke.
Oh, yeah. Think about it. You've got those winds whipping around. All it takes is a tiny spark.
Right.
Dry brush is like kindling, waiting to ignite. And suddenly you've got a raging inferno.
That's terrifying.
We're talking about 27 confirmed deaths, over 200,000 people forced to evacuate,
Wow.
and thousands of homes and businesses just gone.
I was looking at the news reports from CBS, the LA Times.
Yeah,
It's a pretty bleak picture.
it is.
All those numbers, it's just heartbreaking. It's hard to even imagine the scale of it all.
And then you see those YouTube videos, people running from the flames,
Yeah.
losing absolutely everything they own. It's just devastating.
It adds this whole other layer of reality to those statistics.
Like that YouTuber Molly Burke, who's blind.
Right.
Her experience evacuating with her guide dog is just intense.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how vulnerable some groups are in these situations.
And it wasn't just one fire either, right?
No, you had multiple fires burning at the same time. The Hearst fire, the Kenneth fire, and others.
So it's easy to see how things could spiral out of control so quickly.
Absolutely. Speaking of things spiraling, can we talk about the Santa Ynez Reservoir for a second?
Please. That seems like a major plot twist in this whole story.
Absolutely. We've got this key source of water for fighting fires in the Pacific Palisades,
Right.
and it's completely empty when the fires break out.
Empty.
Officials are claiming it was undergoing repairs, but the timing is, let's say, questionable.
Yeah, that seems a little too convenient.
It makes you wonder about the city's level of preparedness.
You'd think they'd have a backup plan, especially given the weather forecasts. And that news footage of the reporter walking around in that bone-dry reservoir
Oh yeah, I saw that.
is pretty chilling.
Yeah, like how do you miss something like that?
It definitely raises some red flags. And while we're on the topic of questioning things, maybe we should dive into some of the more unconventional theories that have popped up around this whole situation.
Okay, here's where things get a bit more speculative.
Right.
We've got rumors accusations flying around.
Especially online.
Like everyone's trying to connect the dots, but sometimes those dots lead to some pretty interesting places.
It's true. The internet can be a wild place.
Like the whole thing with Sean Diddy Combs.
Oh, yeah.
Some people are suggesting the fires were set intentionally to cover up some alleged wrongdoing on his part.
You know, the internet does love a good celebrity conspiracy.
It's like a movie plot.
We've got whispers of a Diddy list, secret tunnels, the whole shebang.
Wild. But it's important to point out that we're talking pure speculation here.
Absolutely.
It's no evidence to support any of this.
Right. But the fact that these theories are spreading so quickly says a lot about how people process information, especially in times of uncertainty.
It's like they need an explanation, even if it's far-fetched.
Exactly. And it's not just Diddy either. Comedian Cat Williams is also claiming the fires were started to clear land for development.
I saw that. That's kind of echoing what happened with the Maui wildfires back in 2023.
Right. This idea that certain people are going to profit from this disaster is unsettling, to say the least.
It definitely adds another layer of suspicion.
Right.
So let's shift gears a bit and talk about the official response to all of this.
Okay.
Governor Newsom declared a state of emergency, asked for federal aid.
Right.
But he's also getting a lot of criticism for how he's handling things.
Yeah. The budget cuts to the LAFD are a big point of contention.
Right.
Some are saying those cuts directly impacted their ability to fight the fires.
I saw this one YouTube video blaming the LAFD's diversity and inclusion programs.
Yeah.
Saying that money should have gone to firefighting resources instead.
That's a pretty strong stance.
It's adding fuel to the fire, so to speak.
It speaks to this larger debate about where our priorities lie as a society, especially during emergencies.
And then there's the whole insurance situation.
No, don't even get me started on that.
It sounds like a complete nightmare.
The Wall Street Journal is reporting that major insurance companies are pulling out of California left and right.
Like who?
State Farm, Allstate. They're either dropping policies altogether or jacking up premiums to insane levels.
So what are people supposed to do? Just cross their fingers and hope for the best?
Well, there's this thing called the FAIR Plan.
Okay.
It's basically a last resort insurance pool for high-risk areas.
Right.
But it's super expensive and doesn't offer as much coverage.
Not ideal.
And some people are arguing that it's just going to widen the gap between the rich and poor.
Which is a whole other can of worms.
Exactly. It's a domino effect. And then, to make things even more interesting, Elon Musk decides to weigh in on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. I saw those tweets.
Mr. Musk certainly knows how to get people talking.
He's calling for an investigation into the empty reservoir.
Right.
And some are seeing that as him trying to politicize the whole tragedy.
It's like he's adding his own spin to an already chaotic situation.
So to recap, we've got massively destructive fires, questions about whether the city was prepared.
Right.
A whole web of rumors and accusations, political finger-pointing, and an insurance crisis brewing. Where do we even begin to unpack all of this?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? But I think it's clear we're seeing some major themes emerging. Climate change is a big one. It's creating the perfect conditions for these mega fires.
It's not just some abstract concept anymore.
Oh, exactly.
It's impacting people's lives in very real and very terrifying ways.
Absolutely. We're also seeing how divided people are in their views on what caused all of this.
Right.
Is it natural, man-made, a conspiracy?
Right.
The answers are all over the map, depending on who you ask.
And then you've got social media, which is like this giant echo chamber.
Yeah.
Both information and misinformation get amplified at lightning speed.
It makes it really hard to separate fact from fiction.
It's like we're drowning in information, but most of us don't have the tools to know what's real and what's not.
Exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've covered the big picture.
Yeah.
But what about some of those almost too crazy to be true stories that came out of this?
Yeah.
Like that firefighter who saved his brother's house using milk and beer?
I read about that. You can't make this stuff up.
Talk about thinking outside the box.
Right. And then you've got Mel Gibson, whose Malibu mansion went up in flames.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that.
And of course, that spawned its own set of conspiracy theories online.
The internet never misses a chance to connect the dots, even if those dots are completely random.
And who could forget that YouTuber who was desperately squirting almond milk on the flames?
Oh my gosh.
It's almost comical, but also kind of heartbreaking.
It really shows the level of desperation people were feeling.
Yeah, for sure.
No,
On a more positive note, we had firefighters coming from all over to help.
that's right.
Mexico, Oregon, even Ukraine.
It's amazing to see people come together like that.
Right. Putting their own lives on the line to help complete strangers.
It definitely restores your faith in humanity a little bit.
It does. And then there's this weird irony about the whole thing in this thing. Los Angeles is trying to be this smart city with all this fancy technology,
Hey.
but they can't even keep their water reservoir full when it matters most.
It's like they're so focused on the future that the present is falling apart around them.
It's kind of a mind-blowing contrast. So we've covered a lot of ground here,
Yeah, we have.
but I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah, it really feels like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here.
Right.
With every new piece of information, we just uncover even more questions.
And that's what makes these deep dives so fascinating. We're not just laying out the facts,
Yeah,
you know?
right.
We're really trying to get at the whole story behind them.
Absolutely.
Speaking of stories, did you see that JP Morgan estimated the insured losses from the fires could reach over $20 billion? Possibly a new record for wildfire insurance claims? And they're saying the total economic hit could be closer to $50 billion.
That's a staggering amount of money.
Yeah.
And it's not just about rebuilding what was lost either.
Right.
Think about the ripple effects on businesses, jobs, even the housing market. It's all connected.
Yeah, I read an article about how some real estate deals are falling apart because buyers can't get affordable insurance.
It's a mess.
It is. And then you've got Governor Newsom proposing this Marshall Plan 2.0 to rebuild after the fires.
Right.
And to tackle the housing shortage.
Right.
But it's already getting pushback.
Of course.
People are worried it's going to end up benefiting wealthy developers more than the folks who actually lost their homes.
Yeah, it's a valid concern.
And then there's the whole question of, whether the government can even handle something this big.
It all adds to this feeling of anxiety and uncertainty in California.
Definitely. And people are leaving the state in droves.
Right, which just makes everything worse.
It's like a perfect storm of problems.
It is.
Climate change, the economy, political divisions, and now this massive natural disaster. It makes you wonder if other places are vulnerable to this kind of thing, too.
It's a scary thought for sure.
It is. It feels like we're at a real crossroads here.
I agree.
Like we have to make some tough choices about how to address these problems before they spiral even further out of control.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the destruction, the economic fallout, the politics, but I think it's important to remember the incredible resilience and acts of kindness that we saw come out of all of this too.
That's a good point. We saw so many stories of first responders putting themselves in harm's way.
Right.
Neighbors helping neighbors, everyday people stepping up to support those in need.
Absolutely.
It was really heartwarming to see.
Yeah, there was this huge outpouring of support from celebrities, athletes, regular folks just wanting to help.
And what about those prison inmates who risked their lives fighting the fires for like $1 an hour?
Oh yeah, I read about that.
Talk about courage.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, you can find these incredible acts of compassion.
And let's not forget all those firefighters who traveled from all over to lend a hand.
It's a testament to the power of community and the willingness to help others no matter where they're from.
It gives you a little bit of hope for humanity, right?
It does. Okay, so we've talked about the immediate aftermath.
Right.
But what about the long-term effects of these wildfires?
Yeah.
What are the lasting implications for California and beyond?
Well, for one thing, we're looking at a long and difficult rebuilding process.
No doubt.
And it's not just about putting homes and businesses back together.
Right?
It's about rebuilding communities, dealing with the emotional trauma, making sure people who lost everything get the help they need.
It's a monumental task.
It is. And then there are the bigger questions we need to be asking about climate change and how prepared we are for future disasters.
Yeah, like why was that Santa Ynez Reservoir empty when we needed it most?
Exactly.
It's a pretty big red flag that our systems just aren't ready for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, it's a wake-up call for sure. We need to start thinking seriously about what we're doing to mitigate the risks of climate change.
Absolutely.
How we're investing in infrastructure that can withstand these kinds of events.
Right.
And how we can make sure our emergency response systems are up to the task.
These are tough questions, but we can't afford to ignore them any longer.
I agree. The LA wildfires have shown us that the cost of inaction is just too high.
Absolutely. We need to learn from this tragedy and use it as an opportunity to create a more sustainable and resilient future.
I completely agree. But there's one more piece of this puzzle I think we should talk about.
Okay.
It's this whole meta-narrative that's running parallel to the actual events.
Yeah.
The whole issue of information and misinformation,
Right.
and how it's shaping public perception of the LA wildfires.
Yes, the information landscape. It's a minefield out there, especially with social media playing such a huge role.
Exactly. We've got competing narratives, conflicting accounts, and then this whole ecosystem of influencers, commentators, self-proclaimed experts, all vying for our attention.
It's hard to know who to believe or what to trust.
It is. And that's the real danger, isn't it?
It is.
When misinformation takes hold, it can undermine trust in institutions, fuel conspiracy theories, even hinder recovery efforts.
It's a slippery slope.
It is.
Yeah.
And it highlights the responsibility we all have to be critical consumers of information. You know,
Absolutely.
we need to be checking sources, questioning what we see and hear, and being wary of anything that seems too sensational or too good to be true.
We need to develop our own internal BS detectors to navigate the online world.
I love that analogy. We need to be discerning, ask questions, be willing to challenge our own biases.
Exactly. Because the truth, as they say, is often stranger than fiction.
Right.
And in the case of the LA wildfires, the truth is complex, multifaceted, and still unfolding.
And it's our job as informed citizens to keep seeking that truth, even if it means facing some uncomfortable realities.
Well said. So we've laid out the facts, the speculation, our analysis. Now it's up to you, the listener, to draw your own conclusions.
But don't stop there. Keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and keep having those important conversations about the challenges facing our world.
Because the LA wildfires, as tragic as they are, also present a real opportunity for learning growth and collective action.
Well, I think it's safe to say this deep dive has left us with a lot to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
The LA wildfires were a tragedy. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely.
But they also make you look at, some of the biggest problems facing society today.
It's like these fires have exposed the cracks in the system.
Right.
Things we might have ignored or downplayed before. Climate change, social inequality, the spread of misinformation.
Right.
They're all connected and they all need our attention.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by it all.
Yeah.
Even paralyzed.
Right.
But I think there's also a glimmer of hope in all of this.
I agree.
A feeling that maybe this could be a turning point.
I understand that feeling of cautious optimism.
Yeah.
Crises often force us to confront hard truths,
Right.
rethink our priorities. We saw it after 9/11 with the 2008 financial crisis, even with the COVID-19 pandemic.
People came together, they found new ways to do things, they came up with solutions.
Exactly. And I believe we can do it again. We need to turn the grief, the anger, and the fear into something positive.
Yeah.
We need to demand better from our leaders,
Right.
support policies that fight climate change, and be more careful about the information we consume.
It's about individual responsibility, but it's also about working together.
Absolutely.
We need to come together as a society to build a future that's more sustainable and more fair.
That's a great way to put it. And that's the message we want to leave you with today.
Okay.
Don't let the LA wildfires fade from your memory.
Right.
Let them be a reminder of how connected we are, how vulnerable we are,
Yeah.
and how much potential we have for positive change.
Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
3 a.m. thoughts built to move the crowd. Late night grind, no fear in sight. 3 a.m. thoughts where men ignite. Built in silence, forged by might. Rise with the moon on the night.
3 a.m. thoughts, revealing the flaws. No fear in the dark, just strength in the fight. Born in the struggle, in the dead of the night, where boys become men. Heavy is the head, but the works you demand. Building from the ground, grit sharp in my hand.
Truth don't sleep, and neither do we. 3 a.m. thoughts where real ones meet.
Got your own 3 a.m. thoughts? Drop them in the comments or hit us up, because this is where men speak their minds. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, this is powered by AI. Subscribe and join the movement, because freedom begins in the mind.